Waiting room. Oh, hello, everybody.
Hello. I love the little bing bing of, hey, you're being recorded. I'm the only person who's going to warn you about this. How's everyone been?
How has everyone been? Shrug.
Doing good.
Doing good over here. Well, on my screen, you're on my left. Lauren's doing all right. She's got a thumbs up.
I'm dead center under the camera, so to look directly at you, I have to look directly at me, which is kind of fascinating to me. The world's on fire. Well, like all the smoke is rolling in, and I'm right up along these hills, and I can't see the hills anymore, and I'm like, we're back.
It's even in the forecast now. I caught the morning news for the first time in a generation, and it was like, oh, it's smoky in Reno today. Oh,
yeah.
it is
Like
smoky.
that wasn't clearly obvious. Notice how they're not going to tell you that this has been classified as a class 2 hazard. At least it was before the wind blew the old batch away. I.e., might be carcinogenic to spend long periods of time out in this, and I'm like, oh, that's fun. That's great. We're not going to tell people about that detail of our lives. I'm sorry. I know I'm being a bit of a rain cloud in everyone's day today.
Yeah, smoke cloud.
Smoke cloud, yes. Yes, I'm the more worrisome rain cloud. I'm not going to make everything kind of soggy. I'm going to warn you that, hey, there's a fire over here. Anyway.
Awesome. All right, everybody else, the list is sort of like, okay. Miles is tired. Jackson's good. We're all dealing. Cold chilling. 14 of us here today. 14. I'll wait until we get to 15 and then I'll move on. Oh, to hell with this.
Did you watch
anybody? Sorry, go ahead.
Did you watch any of the debate last night?
Yeah,
oh my God.
I really didn't want to, but I couldn't tear myself away. They were just both so gosh darn attractive. Just hot pieces of sorry.
I viewed it as my civic duty, and then I was like, why the hell is this my civic duty?
Yeah, I stopped at a certain point.
Why can't they use Donald Trump for like the 2 minutes when he's not supposed to talk?
I mean, they all come into agreement with it, and I mean, there's no way the campaign managers would have allowed the candidates to be muted. It just sucks.
Hard.
I mean,
I like them both so much. It's going to be hard to choose.
Just two people with slightly different views on how to run society, just showing their ideas.
I wish I could vote for both of them and have them be our co-presidents. That's what I want.
Kind of weird. Sorry, It was just an interesting thing that was said, and I am very tired because very tired.
Fair.
You don't think that would be fun to have them both do it at the same time?
The original Odd Couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just want to sick.
Yeah, I gotta like pitch in here. So I agree with Amanda. Why don't we just make the U.S. a co-op business? That's a great idea.
Yes.
The ideas America needs to hear. I love it.
Besides the entire government structure, you don't have votes, you have shares.
That actually brings me to. Oh no, sorry. Hold on. Why can't I share my screen? That actually brings me to a thing. So, Wolfpack Votes sent a bunch of slides to they do this every election year, just to try to get students, I don't know, the information that they need, because students are in a weird spot. Some of you have different addresses than you usually do. So I've uploaded all of the slides, and I just wanted to show some of them here. just in case it's of interest to people. So the most recent election, the midterms, UNR tripled its participation from the previous midterms. Usually there's more voting in election years. And so if we were to triple our voting from last midterms, we would have 150. It'd be impossible. But that was interesting to me. Apparently there's a bit of a competition between different majors to see which ones were most engaged in the previous election compared to the one before. English, math and stats, performing arts and biology all managed to improve their participation rate by 30% or more. So the rest of you, where's philosophy? Is philosophy not on here? Damn it.
Not on there.
Are you?
Clumped in with psychology.
Okay. All right, psychology, humanities, I guess, is all of the things. Although English, if anything is a humanity,
I know,
English
right?
Whatever. All right, fine. Philosophy is not independent. And we only have like 120 majors. We punch above our weight. Okay. I honestly didn't know this information before I saw this slide. So early voting starts in 2.5 weeks. And then it stops the weekend before the election. So if you don't early vote by the Friday before the Tuesday, you have to wait until the Tuesday of election day to vote. It's fair? Okay. Apparently there's info, you can check that out. You can check your registration status in Nevada by going to that website. And then they recommend you make a voting plan. So make a plan.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat I just saw. Like 70% more likely to vote if you just write a simple plan down.
It's yeah, no, it is. Actually, it's going to be directly related to something we're talking about maybe next week. So we're doing decision making next week. And in that same unit, I don't know if it'll be that particular lecture that we talk about next week or the Monday after, but we're going to be talking about behavioral economics and all of those little quirks that make people more likely to vote or more likely to. So we're going to be talking about how, for example, let's say you're going to buy a bottle of wine and there's like a $2 chuck, a $15 bottle of wine and a $100 bottle of wine. You're more likely to buy the middle one because they made you think that it was a good deal compared to the $100 one. Like marketing has used the evidence from psychology, behavioral economics, and neuroscience to be able to like get in your head. And now, sorry?
The example you can actually like see on the regular. Every store you go to has produce in the front, and it's all because you have this big fresh produce section, and they're designed like a maze to get you to walk past as much shit as possible. Casinos do the same thing.
Fascinating. I mean, it is a thing. Like we'll talk about how that research started, and then now it's gotten basically weaponized against all of you.
Yeah, my gosh.
and I mean that like in both good ways and bad ways, right? Ostensibly voting is like a neutral thing, but like every candidate you see now will tell you to make a plan. It's just a thing. And in bad ways, like social, like your phone will give you a notification idiosyncratically, and then you'll go in there and spend a half hour looking at stuff because they'll keep putting new things. It's an infinite scroll. You keep like finding new things to look at. And it's all because they're using this research that they know that you have this feeling of like, oh, I got a little bit of a reward this time. Sometimes I get a big reward, and if I keep scrolling, I'll find a cool.
Yes, taken directly from the gaming guys. I mean, they took it. They hired away guy. Google hired away. I mean, I'm old enough to. I mean, I saw all this shit go down. I grew up in Vegas. I grew up in the computer industry, and I get sick. I get sick to my stomach right now, even thinking about it. But yeah.
Yeah, and the worst part, I mean, like you guys are all adults. I don't, whatever. Fuck you guys. But like kids, right? Kids are being raised on this, and they don't quite know what it is that is making them chronically depressed. Like the generation right behind you is the most depressed generation. They're having less sex. They're hanging out with their friends less. They're trying fewer drugs. I mean, like some good things, some bad things, whatever, however you associate those. But like, it is a very depressed generation because of all of the gamified social media that surrounds them. Anyway, plan. Voter registration. There's 3 ways to register to vote: online, on paper, or at the polls. Here's information. It's a lot of information. If you need to register to vote and you haven't done it, almost certainly there's going to be somebody with a clipboard you'll run into between now and then. But failing that, you can go to these websites and do this stuff. Cool. You can early vote. As I said, you can vote by mail starting, is that Friday? Friday. Okay. Starting Friday, you'll be able to vote by mail. We have, what, 35 days left? Fun. If you live on campus, do any of you guys live on campus? Nope. Nope. Okay. Well, if you did, this would be information for you. It's not. You don't. And if you are registered in other states, you can get absentee ballots. Here are 5 of the most Western states in the nation. I left out Arizona because fuck Arizona. Sorry. Strong feelings against Arizona. Growing up in New Mexico,
Oh my gosh, because I went to NAU for.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I love Tucson.
Yeah.
Fuck Phoenix.
Fuck Phoenix. Okay, all right, we're agreed. Phoenix is the worst.
Flagstaff is one of the most awesome spots on the planet. I don't know.
All right, okay, I'm fine with it. My own personal biases should not prejudice how you feel about.
Where at New Mexico?
South Central New Mexico, right by El Paso, Texas.
Right.
A town called Chaparral.
Oh yeah.
I like to talk trash about Arizona every chance I get, just because it's funny to me. I really have I don't actually have any animosity. I just find it funny. Okay, so states. Oh, one more. So any questions on any of that stuff? That's basically all the information I have. But maybe I have more information deep down in the back of my head. No questions? Sweet. So I'm hosting an event in 8 days called Confronting Legacies of Health Disparities. So I started this series about 2 years ago with the Core Humanities Department. And it's not quite an interview series, it's kind of like a panel discussion on topics that we think of as important. So last year we did future visions of blank, and then there were lots of like topics: future visions of the city, future visions of food and culture, future visions of the environment, that kind of stuff, politics and people. The year before we did the role of the humanities in times of crisis and it was 2 years ago. I don't remember any of those. But this year we have legacies as our major theme, and in the fall we're talking about confronting legacies. In the spring we'll be talking about building legacies. So we're talking about health disparities, voter suppression, and policing and violence each month for the remainder of the year. And then in the spring we're going to come back to some version of each of these, and we're going to add education as another topic. So we're going to talk about building legacies of education. I forget what the exact verbiage is, education something. This should be a really good event. I'm an awesome host. Everybody loves me. Also, I have recruited a couple of really important, really cool speakers. There's people in the medical school here that focus on health disparities. I've recruited Françoise Baylis, who is a Canada Research Chair in Bioethics. She is like a pretty big, heavy duty in the bioethics world. And we're also having as a panelist Caleb Cage, who is the COVID-19 response director for Nevada. It's going to be a live event, so you can ask all of your questions about what the hell's going on in Nevada to literally the expert in Nevada. Also general questions to other people. So it should be good, and it counts as extra credit for this class if you attend and write a one-page summary of something that happened.
Obviously, it's going to be online.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, so right now thought-on-top.event redirects to a countdown, but on the day of it'll redirect to the event page. So after this class, I'm going to go figure out the logistics of that. This has sucked up many days of my life. So I'm excited to actually see it happen. Yeah, should be fun. Cool? Good? Yeah, Amanda, thumbs up. Oh yeah, Alyssa nodding. Yeah, just the rest of you aren't on my little camera thing, so I can't see what you're doing. You could be flipping me off. I wouldn't know any better. I didn't see that. So, okay. Cognitive science. This one's a bit of a tricky week. I was trying to figure out what the discussion was going to be today. The reason it's tricky is because there's two very different things to discuss. So I thought I'd start off with a little bit of a background of what we've talked about so far. We spent quite a bit of the beginning of the semester on historical views of the mind from the ancients all the way to the 20th century, right? And then I gave some theoretical background on philosophy of science, computation, information theory, that kind of stuff. We talked about the representational theory of mind, mental architectures, and finished up on cognitive science as a field, including cognitive neuroscience this Monday. And then we're starting a new topic officially today, consciousness. So consciousness is gonna, some of the background that's gonna be relevant is ancient views, modern views, and mentalism, these views of consciousness. So not as much of the like all of the machinery, the theoretical machinery and the stuff that we spent the past couple of weeks developing, that will be relevant for the rest of this class here and there, but it's just, we're moving on to a different topic. Cool? Cool, okay. So, the basic sort of issues here, in cognitive neuroscience, I went over, in that video, I just went over various, and in the reading actually mapped onto the video fairly well, into the lecture fairly well. I went into the various approaches in cognitive neuroscience to try to figure out what's actually going on, right? So some of those are particular kinds of brain damage. We'll talk a little bit about that today. If you damage a certain part of your head, what goes wrong? And then there's been enough people that have had enough damage that we can start like piecing things together. There's an assumption that mice or rodents and primates, who are our model organisms of choice here, that they're similar enough to our human brains that what's going on with them will actually be relevant to us. it's not that big of an assumption, right? Because they are very, very closely related to us. We share something like 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, right? We all of the brain structure, all of the structures that are in our brain are also in chimpanzees, and most of them are also in mice and rats. And there's a phenomenon in evolutionary biology called phylogenetic inertia, which is a complicated way of saying that stuff doesn't change that much unless there's a reason for it. You can break things over evolutionary time by accident, but losing things or gaining things usually requires like selective pressure. There's got to be like a reason for it. Fair? So we studied brain damage in people that have either had it by accident, in horrible war crime scenarios, or in surgeries to treat other problems. Or we could just do whatever the hell we want with mice and a little bit less of whatever the hell we want with primates, but yeah, still basically whatever the hell we want. So lesions are one thing. We've also developed ways of imaging what's going on in the brain. And when I say what's going on, I mean a very specific sorts of things of what's going on, like blood flow and blood oxygenation, under the assumption that that's like the more blood your brain needs, the more that part needs to process, which might be true, or it might be some other thing. It might be that there's chemistry that's relevant that we're not being able to pay attention to, right? Like brain imaging is telling us that something is going on, but it doesn't tell us exactly what. And then there's electrophysiology. You can just like shock people and see what you interrupt, or measure conductivity in different parts of your head, or even like jam something, usually in non-human animals, jam something in the head to measure like a single neuron when it's activated. So that's helpful. And then finally, like integrating it all with models.
You can measure a single neuron, Carlos?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Behold the future. We can edit a genome at will, and we can measure your neurons.
That's freaking me out.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's one of those things where it feels like now that we have that capability, it should be like a hop, skip, and a jump away to put it all together, but it actually turns out that it just raises more problems. So, you know, you can like study a puzzle piece in isolation, and then you're like, oh, if I just study infinite or like a billion puzzle pieces, I'll figure out what the puzzle's made of. I'm like, maybe. Or maybe the puzzle's changing and maybe whatever. But yeah, we can measure like what causes a single neuron to fire. It's intrusive. You have to like jam a needle into your head. So we tend not to do it to humans. So yeah, all of that is awesome and cool and like lots of good evidence that's useful and it's going to be relevant for the rest of the class. And yet, I use this analogy in the video. It's like cutting the power cord to your TV. Like the fact that something breaks doesn't necessarily mean that that was the cause of like, you're watching CSI goes off the moment you cut the power cord. That doesn't mean that the power cord caused CSI to be on your TV. So that would be a lesion, the analogy to a lesion, a brain lesion, right? If you can, if a part of the TV gets warm, that doesn't mean that that part of the TV made that particular character appear on the screen, right? You can run the analogy pretty far. It's like correlation is not causation. Correlation is not causation. Correlation, nevertheless, is correlated with causation. So, so those are the that's one issue with cognitive neuroscience. That, to be fair, like a lot of cognitive neuroscientists are fully aware of, right? Like this isn't a surprise to anybody. another issue is that all of these techniques that we described, or that I described, measure different things at different time scales, and it's not obvious how to fit them together. It's like if I could measure a spark plug in your car and also the average lifespan of cars like yours. It's not obvious how to integrate those unless I have much more knowledge of how cars work and what the spark plug is doing to your car, right? Like those are just very different scales. And then consciousness. So I thought I'd get into consciousness a little bit here because next week we're going to be doing decision making. So I don't know what the hell consciousness is. I don't think anybody knows. Oh,
Yeah, you'd be framing your Nobel Prize if you could prove that one.
Right. There's a couple of views, right? That consciousness is a kind of perception, perhaps, in the same way that you can like see, you can sense your own internal body temperature and whether you're on balance or not. Maybe it's a perception of your thoughts or of external events or of your inner life or of yourself. You just sense yourself. Some people think it's not that, it's a knowledge of your thoughts, external events, inner life, or internal selves, sensations. Yes, Amanda.
Wait, is there any proof that consciousness actually exists at all, or is that just something that we're like discussing?
Yeah, we'll discuss that today. Cool.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those things where everybody can prove it to themselves. Like there is something it is like to be me. Although next week I'm going to talk about the illusion of conscious will. In that lecture, we'll talk about the possibility of consciousness not being a single phenomenon, and in fact, you're just like a person like along for the ride as your body does stuff, trying to like explain your own actions. So if that's the case, then consciousness is just a story we tell ourselves to keep ourselves happy. Which I'm actually really happy. I'm okay with that. Most people are not. Most people, that freaks them out to their core.
I guess it could be worse. There are worse things.
Yeah.
We could be synapses in this hive mind that, you know, we call a species. That's what I've heard bandied about.
Would you know if you were a synapse?
We look at the ants like, huh, kind of weird they're dying because that one ant produces the rest and tells them what to do while we wage a war, while a dude tells us, oh yeah, go kill yourself in that desert for me, please.
Christopher? Okay. Yeah, so, yeah. And the last one is global state. So this is the idea of metacognition, cognition about cognition. So there's some sort of other thing going on, not quite a perception, not quite knowledge, something else. I think a lot of people that contemplate this problem very seriously end up being sort of wary of trying to even answer it. Just like life and biology, energy and physics, time and physics, lots of those things. So we tend to divide consciousness, at least in the past couple of decades, we've been dividing consciousness into easy problems and hard problems. So easy problems are, what are we aware of? What are we not aware of? When I say Desmo, it grabs his attention. It does. Jeffrey, grabs your attention, right? Yeah. There's a slide in the lecture that's just like all of your names, in the hopes that you'd like see your name and be like, oh my God, that's me, snap. Yeah. How do we come to be aware of consciousness? What is a relationship between attention and consciousness? Like sometimes you're just driving along and you feel like you just arrived at a place. You forgot sorry, let me go back. Doop, doop, doop. Sometimes you're driving along and you sort of forget that you're driving. You just like show up at a place. You're like, oh snap. How does our consciousness relate to our actions? Is consciousness one thing, many, or none? I'm gonna show a video right quick about that. And then the last thing. Let's see. Can you guys, what can you guys see? Can you see my screen?
See the slide that we've been looking at?
You can see the slide. You can't see the video that I just clicked on. Okay.
Now we saw you.
So I click on the video. Okay. So I'm going to share this. And we're just going to watch this right quick.
There's no sound if it's supposed to be playing.
There's no sound? Snap.
No sound.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Can I share sound? Wow, I've never actually tried sharing sound before.
I know there is a way to share your computer noise, but I wouldn't know.
You could just put the speaker next to the microphone. That could work.
Let's do it.
When asked to point to a picture of what he saw, he chooses Bell. But when asked why,
Yeah, why'd you pick that one? Music.
And when asked to explain,
There's music down. It was a few minutes ago. Last time I heard any music was coming from the bells out here, banging away.
So the bells outside here.
So, but good enough answer to me.
what's extraordinary is that Joe's speaking left brain concocts a plausible story of why he pointed to Bell, even when some of the other pictures more obviously represent music. Gazzaniga believes this determination to find cause and effect, this desire to explain, is the left hemisphere's most marvelous property.
One of the unique things to the human brain is this need to interpret why two events occurred. What was the antecedent of this? What caused this? Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine that a species like us that has that little chip in its brain that asks those questions is going to survive rather well, because it's going to figure out more about the nature of the world than a species that doesn't have it.
Okay, Joe, I want you to keep your hand.
But as I was about to discover, the right brain has a very useful survival skill all its own. What do you think will happen here?
So for you, we're doing a live experiment. Never done it before.
The experiment involves the 16th century Italian painter Arcimboldo, who made faces out of fruit, flowers, meat, even books. From other research, there's reason to believe that the ability to recognize faces is located exclusively in the right hemisphere. So Mike wondered if Arcimboldo's paintings would look different to each of Joe's two brains.
So will his left hemisphere say, I saw a potato, I didn't see a face? And will his right hemisphere say, I saw the face, and not comment on the fact that it's made out of a potato?
You're going to see a figure followed by a choice of two words.
If this works, it'll be terrific. We'll see. So here it is, live.
Okay.
The first painting goes to the right hemisphere. And Joe points to face. The next painting goes to his left brain. And this time he points to fruits. Mike seemed pleased. Are you having a moment? Again to the right brain, and Joe sees it as a face.
Put it down.
But to the left brain,
Face made out of books. Books.
Were you happy with what you're seeing?
It's unbelievable. He's doing it. You see that?
It's going so fast, it's shifting from left to right so fast, I can't keep up with you. You're used to looking at this.
When you show him a face in the right side, the left hemisphere,
yeah,
he's focusing in on the elements that made up the face.
Yeah.
Now, when you show him the exact same picture in the left field going to the right hemisphere, he's focusing on the face and not the elements.
If you came down from another planet and you saw faces and vegetables, you might not think there was much of a difference among them, but the brain seems to be made up in a certain way to say faces are very different from other objects.
That's right.
And one side of the brain specializes in faces.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It is an adaptation that we have to detect upright faces. It's a very important. You can imagine in an evolutionary time that all of a sudden you have the ability to detect quickly an upright face. You want to read the expression on that face. You want to know if it's friend or foe. You want to have a set of questions about that face.
The right brain might be skilled at recognizing faces, but when it comes to what gives the human mind its power, the ability to reason, to invent, to interpret the world around it, Mike Gazaniga's 30 years of research has taught him which hemisphere he wouldn't want to be without.
The old phrase around our lab is don't leave home without your left hemisphere. That's where the action is.
Okay. So what was happening there? This is a particular patient who has this string of connections between the left and right hemisphere severed. It's called the corpus callosum. The reason it happened was because he had lots of seizures, and what seizures are, it's just like an electrical storm. So what you do is you just cut the amount of real estate that the seizure can go through, and so it doesn't take over, doesn't make him actually convulse. And so it may have saved his life, may have saved him from lots of brain damage, but it left him in this weird situation where half of his brain is only able to pick up on what's going on as it's happening outside. It's not communicating inside the brain. Okay. And the first part of that was this experiment that's become really popular, where it's called confabulation. You flash something like instructions to the left visual field, because the eyes are it's cross correlated, right? So left visual field goes to the right hemisphere. You say get up, and the patient will get up. But because that's not where the speech centers, the Wernicke's and Broca's area are located, when you then go ahead and ask the patient why they got up, they will make something up. So in some of these cases, they they flash like get up and then a Coca-Cola can, and they get up and they're like, why'd you get up? I wanted a Coca-Cola can. Or they flash a scary image, and they say they like flash a name or whatever. They're like, why'd you react that way? Oh, like that's a scary thing. I associate it with my past or whatever. They'll make up stories instantly without realizing it.
Like everybody, is it, or a large percentage? I want to see that experiment.
Yeah,
that's creepy.
It's an epilepsy procedure. What's going on is that, well, I don't know exactly what's going on, but the TLDR of it is that your speech can only occur on one side of the brain. This is what the Broca's area is. So if that's severed from other bits of the brain, and then you ask it, why are you scared? It doesn't. There's not that. Why the hell did I do that? It's just like, no, this is why I did it. It doesn't even know it's doing it. It's just that it's just making words.
That's wild, because I mean, I don't know if we're getting into next week, but no one chooses just to say I don't know?
Not often.
Well, wouldn't it be like your brain knows that you had a purpose for standing up? Like you wouldn't have stood up without a purpose, but since it doesn't have the information, it has to like extrapolate backwards.
So that's an interpretation, right? But the weird part about it is that it does extrapolate backwards, and it makes something up, right? It's not like oh, I don't know. Oh, it's probably because I wanted to go to Coca-Cola. It It'll make up a story and it'll be convinced of it. Like that, the beginning of that video where they say point to music, and they flashed a bell on one side and some music on the other side. He's like, oh, okay, point to music, but he actually points to bell, or to like the church bell or something. Yeah. So it's like the mind is making up a story. And the scary part about that is maybe they're not unique. Maybe that's how we all process the world. So that is something that is called an easy problem. It's an easy problem because you can figure out how to address it, you can study it. There's something called the hard problem of consciousness. And the hard problem of consciousness involves this, what it feels like-ness. There's a term for it, it's qualia, right? So the smell of smoke, the taste of salt, the color red when you see it, like that, the what it is like experience, that seems to be problematic when you start really wrestling with it. So some people deny that that even exists. It's tricky to try to make sense of how that works. The way they say is, well, what philosophers are talking about with qualia is something that doesn't make a difference, but the only things that exist are things that make a difference. And it's like an inside debate. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But here's an issue, like qualia is non-physical. So if you stare at that lock in that red screen, that image on the right hand of the slide, if you stare at it for a while and then turn to look at something like at a white wall, you'll see an after image of something vaguely green, right? You've seen after images, it's a thing you've seen. But there is no green. This was red. Nothing inside your brain is green. Where does the green come from? Since it's not physical, it can't be something physical, people think, well, that must mean that there's non-physical stuff going on. The experience is something non-physical. That's a debate to be had. And then people say, okay, well, could you imagine somebody behaving the way that you behave, the way a human behaves, without ever experiencing anything? So you program a computer that can walk around and pass the Turing test, and then it can tell the difference between red and not red. It can like process to see how much NaCl is in a food sample, so it can tell you whether it's salty or not salty. And then you ask it, hey, is there something it is like to be you? Well, some people want to say yes, some people want to say no. You can easily imagine a computer being able to do all of those things, right? Like none of those are beyond the realm of possibility. And then there's other issues associated with this, like what is the relationship between how consciousness feels and what science uncovers? Why do we experience your breathing but not like your spleen, right? You can take a deep breath and hold it, and you can feel it as you breathe. But like try as you might, you're not going to be able to feel your spleen. You're not going to be aware of certain things. Not even that ridiculous, right? Like maybe there's not a good nerve connections to your spleen, but like there's decisions that you make, there's activities that you make, there's conscious actions that you make that you are not aware of. Why can you be aware of some things but not others? Why does, and relatedly, why do they feel the way they do? Why does sight look a certain way rather than like taste a certain way? Why does sound Why can you hear sound and not feel sound? Like, some people have synesthesia where this is inverted or broken or changed. And that kind of reveals that there's some weird stuff that could happen. So why does it? So the reason it's called the hard problem of consciousness is because this like cluster of problems, it's hard to even think about how science could start to address them. Do people kind of get the hard problem? Does the reason why it's a problem make sense? Cool. All right. So we got 15 minutes, probably no breakout rooms, but let me just throw out the prompt to the whole class. Why does consciousness exist? Why are we conscious of some things but not others? And why does consciousness feel the way that it does? If we have consciousness at all. Like if you're Amanda, maybe we don't have consciousness. Maybe we're all lying to ourselves. Anyone have thoughts they want to share? As I toss the hardest problem in science to you.
I was struck when you were showing us the corpus callosum video where they're like, oh yeah, I really don't want to be without my left hemisphere. And I'm like, but it's the left hemisphere that's saying that. Like, if we assume that there is an emergent property to thought in general, that you can trick a rock to think by building logic gates on it and zapping it with electricity, and that is distinct from consciousness, but you can't identify something else, something physical you can point to, I think that we have to prove that there's an alternative to the substance we know about to get to that stage of it. But if we consider consciousness as an emergence of thoughts that are interrelating, that creates this agency that's just 1,000 prioritized things being weighed hither and thither, then the part that you experience as you might not be the agent making the decisions, but just one part of the more broad aware whole. Like, we see other animals, social creatures like insects, and they do things that seem insane. They'll build a bridge out of their own bodies. They will go to wars where they're guaranteed to die, and you think, okay, that's a little nuts. But humans have done the same thing, and if we just have a more intricate code that's less pheromones and more symbols and language and the like, then we might just be the great justifier, justifying the things other people convinced us to do, who themselves were only convincing us because they were convinced to do.
Right. So the idea is that there is a what it is like for most things, or at least for you could make a what it is like. There could be something it is like to be a rock with electrodes attached to it. But it just so happens that we are the people talking about it. We are the ones that are like making up stories about it. We're actually no more than just like a series of automata that were just more complicated in weird ways. Is that sort of the point?
Yeah, that's kind of the point, but we're limited in our perspective because we're inside it. And once we get to a post-human entity, it would be able to look at us like we look at computers and the animals we stick needles into. You can't figure it out when you're in the thick of it, you know? At least that's my proposition.
Cool. I like it. Any other thoughts? Amanda, I want to hear your skepticism. I want to hear it.
I don't know. People just like to rationalize everything, either with religion or the planets, whatever horoscope they get for the day, or like, I don't know. I feel like whatever opportunity we get to displace the responsibility to something else that's not us is what we do.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know. If it's like consciousness is being led by like our subconscious and like how it's broken apart, and then people are like, oh, my subconscious is telling me this. It's like, you can't talk to your subconscious, and people do that all the time. So I feel like it's all It's all a ruse.
So the idea then is something like we can talk about breaking it apart, we can talk about the aspects of it, but when the rubber meets the road, those are all just going to be stories that we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
I
think we do similar things that the people with the severed corpus callosum do, where they just rationalize whatever their behavior is. I think we do that. It's less apparent because our brains still, like both hemispheres do still talk to each other, but that doesn't necessarily mean we always know why we do the things that we do. If you ask anybody why they did a stupid thing, they'll go, I don't know. And then they'll come up with the reason eventually if you force them to, but I don't know. Some people just don't know why they do the things that they do. So,
Christopher?
I'm thinking, I mean, I read those three statements and Zen koans come to mind. The sound of one hand clapping being probably the most familiar to most people. I wish I had a couple more, but they kind of evoke or they're designed to evoke a break,
Mm-hmm.
to where you can experience consciousness at a direct level. I mean, if my understanding is correct on the Zen koan.
On the topic of cones, there was another with the two students and the master who came across the flag, and they argued, I see the flag moving. Well, I see the air moving around the cloth. And then stuff like that. There's it's a perception game, and that's
I mean, which draws to attention. I was gonna try to get, is consciousness attention? Why you experience some parts of it because your attention's there, and is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, the Buddhism connection is fascinating because the Buddhist worldview has consciousness being basically an illusion, right? It's just it's like a set of stories we tell ourselves as we move forward. We're a set of perceptions.
Individual consciousness is illusion. Consciousness as a whole is the only thing.
Right. The conscious identity over time is an illusion. Like a being exists for a single thought. Sure. I mean, there's something really interesting about that like is hard to accept, at least for a lot of people, especially if you're raised in a Western society, like a very individualistic society that we're in. But if you try to like wrestle with it, try to like genuinely think that I'm just a set of thoughts and emotions and feelings, and tomorrow I'll wake up and they're going to be similar to the ones today. They're going to be different in a lot of ways. And forgiving your past self, and I guess, I don't know, if you didn't think that your future self was you might not do your laundry or something. Jackson?
Yeah, and like I think it's a really interesting solution to the problem too, because it's like the things that Buddhism tries to solve is like disintegrating your sense of self and like achieving like a pure consciousness. And then that way you have like full control, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the sense of like personal autonomy, the only way that we like consider the self as a thing is in like individuation, right? And like being separate. So, and the only way that we know if we have like full control over our consciousness is by being separated. Like, I had a train of thought. Like the things that we take responsibility for are the things which are probably more biological and less about consciousness. Because the further you get into pure consciousness, the further away you get away from the self.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to inject in the middle of this. If we get down to the brass tacks, part of the problem we have is that consciousness is the incorporation of our own awareness. So once we start trying to seriously consider the limits of consciousness and what it is, we have to also tacitly consider the world that we occupy. I'm drinking all manner of things that people would say are poison. I mean, hell, I got fucking 5 hours, I got fucking this nonsense, but I'm thinking that this is something that will keep me going. It gets rid of the hunger and all that. But at the end of the day, that is just the symbols and the associations I've planted on the thing, and some hyper intelligent machine or some enlightened being from beyond the stars might go, look at them drink poison. Look at them go. I mean, it makes sense because, you know, that's how the mechanisms in their meat work. They can't help but to do that. And that's a lot of things we do, we aren't going to have something to root ourselves onto because they require us to somehow have a perspective from outside of ourselves. Like certain parts of our language and our art, we might be able to surmise, oh, well, maybe this is why it is. But we don't know when we started, we don't know where it came from, and we don't know why we do it. We don't know why anyone does anything, you know? And we're not going to know until something that isn't human is able to diagnose us. Sorry, didn't we go off on a rant there?
No, that's great.
Joseph,
What's the difference between awareness and consciousness? Okay.
That's a genuine question, right? Like it's tricky because some people think consciousness is just a kind of awareness, a kind of attention.
Okay.
You attend to the things that you're conscious of. But if that's the case, then all sorts of things are conscious. So,
well, yeah.
I mean, I feel, well, don't, you know, but my consciousness directs my awareness.
Cool. So,
I would actually, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would actually argue the counterpoint that consciousness reacts to awareness. If I go outside and I see, okay, I can't see the hills because there's smoke out, I go back inside. My awareness did not materially create the smoke, or if it did, I am not in conscious control of the process by which the eye of enlightenment does that. The smoke's there, I'd rather it not be there, I can't make it go away.
Okay, everybody. Feel the way your shirt feels on you right now. Just pay attention to it. Are you conscious of it? Or are you conscious of it before?
Right.
I mean, there's a relationship, right? And so some people want to like explore that relationship. It might be causal in one way, it might be causal in another way. One may be a subset or superset of the other. There's a deep relationship, and I can force you to be aware of like the taste of your mouth or the feeling of your sock. Well, okay, I could keep going.
You are aware of your own breathing right now, the cadence, the slow in and out of the tide inside your chest. You are aware that you are in conscious control of it, and if you stop thinking about it, it might slow down. You might feel a little bit air hungry, so you got to have a little bit of consciousness, just making sure you keep that going. Have fun with that.
It kind of reminds me of the game, which now you all lost. Sorry.
That's a throwback right there.
Yeah. I want to hear from some of you people without your cameras on. I haven't heard from you guys in a while, like Alyssa, Chantel, Lauren, Claudina. You guys have thoughts?
I sort of agree with the Buddhist line of thought that it's all sort of an illusion. Like I think if consciousness was a thing that was really happening to us, I think we'd just be fully conscious. Like, I don't know, I feel like half conscious, partially conscious. We don't even know what we're not conscious of. I just feel like consciousness is not something that can be partially or halfway done. I feel like you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think about how we, like it seems really bad to like smother somebody who's conscious to death. probably also bad to smother somebody that's unconscious. But it seems worse if they're aware of it, right? And so I think, okay, well, moral responsibilities seem to increase the more conscious somebody is or something is. So if you injected somebody with adrenaline and then did stuff, that would be way worse than if you injected them with like opium or something. I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure I can back that claim, though, because there is something to be said by keeping someone's awareness from something can actually make the situation worse. Like, yeah, we have polluted rivers, but if everyone knows they're polluted, it's like, I mean, like if they really wanted to stop it, but then if you find out, oh, we just didn't fucking tell anybody that they've been drinking lead or textile runoff for years, and that's why they all have cancer. Like the thing that went down in the valley where they were doing the nuclear burn off, and they didn't say anything, and people started getting cancer. Like, sorry, it's just that keeping secrets kind of flies. I don't have a fully formed thought on that. I apologize.
It's where you feel. I think there's something there that when you feel like something has been kept from your consciousness for a while, and that you've been actually drinking like lead polluted water for 10 years or whatever, it seems bad. Yeah. Did you sorry, Claudina, did you turn on your camera? Did you want to say a thing? Yeah? No?
I just had her. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, it's because I had heard you say my name. So I was like, oh, let me turn on my camera. Sorry. I
You're
have
good.
another class, so I was also getting ready for the other class because I got to
You're good.
attend in person.
But Claudine, not to throw you under the bus, aren't you doing some left-right brain studies or something?
So right now for my capstone class for neuro, we're working on this research project, and the topic that I chose was kind of correlating. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's the dual process theory, specifically the dual process theory of memory and thinking. I'm trying to see if that can be correlated with bilingualism, specifically from the caudate nucleus, just because I was doing a lot of different research and I saw that caudate volume in the brain is seen to be higher in bilingual brains than monolingual brains. So it kind of got me thinking, well, if you know more than one language, are you creating these more neurological connections within your mind that are strengthening your neurons, whether it be creating more synapses or whatnot? And if that can actually lead to potentially better intuition and you being able to process and connect things at a quicker, faster pace in a way.
So it seems like that's fascinating to me, and at some point I'd like to hear more about that. But it seems like there's a distinction between people that were raised bilingual, people that learn language later on, and people that are actively learning or using another language, right? Like all of those seem to be qualitatively different in the kinds of evidence or in the kinds of effects you would see on the brain.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when early on in my research, I was seeing that the most benefit that you can gain from it is when you are learning both of them early on, like before the age of 5, as your brain is still developing. And that's kind of like a really good question. Like, okay, so as your brain is developing, the odds of you being able to create those like new synapses and more connections, does that differ if you were to do it later on in your life? That's a good question. Like, I really don't know.
Fascinating. Oh yeah. All right. We should probably any more stuff on consciousness. One of these topics that's just like it's like a hard to wrap your head around. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we'll just call it there. Unless people have other things. Next week we're gonna do. Actually, we might be getting into like some thinking fast, thinking slow stuff. So I forget exactly what's on the docket for next week. It's definitely illusion of conscious will, and then I forget if I'm just doing the setup or if I'm actually going through the other stuff. But yeah, have a great weekend. See you guys later.
Later, Carlos.
Bye. Thanks, Carlos.
Of course.
Later, you're not getting rid of me that quickly. You have to actually kick me out of the room, but later either way.
Awesome.
I got nothing else going today, so.
I had a,
Silly sci-fi game.
Quinlan?
yeah, I just had a question about the lecture quizzes.
Yes.
I opened two of them this morning, and they were empty. Like there was no questions in the quiz, which is weird. So I exited them.
Did you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I saw the due date change. This is while I was at work this morning. The due date changed. I pulled them up again, and they're marked as zeros now. So I just want to know if there'd be a chance to reattempt.
Oh man, are you the exact person that slipped through the cracks? Hold on. Okay, that's funny. That's really funny.
There was a handful like that for me too. There was nothing there. And 0 out of 0, I figured is 100.
Same with me too. There were a couple that had 0 questions.
Yeah, now
those already. I thought the due date was still like a ways off for those. Yeah.
Yeah, I put okay.
Because I rushed them all yesterday. I hope I could change my grade.
Anybody that got to them before I did, with the exception up until seconds ago, Quinlan, I automatically adjusted your grade up. So everybody that has still yet to do the assignment still has to do them. But the rest of you don't worry about it.
No, you scared because I usually hold off because I have other things that do. I just prefer to work when the sun's down, and I was there like, oh no, I missed some.
No, you're good. Everybody that did anything, your grade has been adjusted. You can check it if you want.
Oh, okay. Well,
awesome.
I have a question about the glossary exam. So since it's 2 attempts, will whichever one is higher be considered?
No, I'm going with the lower one. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding.
I was just nervous about retaking it because, I'm okay with my grade, but I don't want to retake it and do worse. So I was just kind of weighing.
Yeah, you take it again if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's still due the 7th, right?
Yes.
Or whatever it says. All right.
Whatever it says. Let me look at whatever it says. Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So the quizzes that said that they had 0 questions worth 0 points, we do have to do that?
You're good. Don't you? You don't. You're fine.
Okay.
Anybody that got ahead of me is fine. People that
Wait,
didn't
I didn't get ahead of you because I just saw it. I didn't click on it.
Oh, now they're not worth 0, so you could click on them and take them.
Oh, wait, so now they're worth points for me?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It benefits everybody that went out of their way to try it. But yeah.
Well, thank you, Professor, for the clarification.
No problem.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, have a good day, Professor.
No problem. You too. Bye.
So yeah, that was actually my question that you answered. Was I had all those quizzes that were empty too. But I had one quick question, kind of going back to a previous topic. If you could explain real fast.
Sure.
And that's our favorite topic, connectionism. So it's kind of practically some of the examples you gave, and from what I can pull out of it, is kind of comparing our brains or neural networks to kind of a computer algorithm. But if I recall, I remember you talking earlier in this semester, my bad, that's kind of the wrong way to look or compare a brain is to a computer. But here we are doing that. Is that just trying to show us the problem with it?
I'm not I don't want to say that it's the wrong way to do it. It's just a way to do it that has benefits and problems, drawbacks. And so yeah.
Okay, I'll go. I was just gonna say so it's practically you were just kind of showing us kind of the differences I forgot his name, but the Chinese box room and
Cyril, yeah.
how a computer has input output and has to be programmed, and kind of the flaws with that. I believe a computer is brittle, and which I don't know how that kind of works out because I feel brains can be brittle too, Yeah. But and how a computer can only do one input at a time or something along the lines, at least with the Turing test. But is that kind of like the main point of it, was just to kind of show us? But then if that's the case, wouldn't it kind of not be like, what's so bad about kind of comparing a brain to a computer, I guess?
It's not bad. It actually gives us some good ways of getting traction. Like if you're thinking about processing information, a computer is really cool because it's a dumb way of processing information. So our brains might do that, at least in some respect, right? Maybe in all respects, but it gets us from where we were before a little bit up ahead. But I just always point out that, like, we used to think of our brain as a filing cabinet or as like a blank slate, or now people are thinking about it as like the internet or something. And each of those has benefits and drawbacks. And if the Chinese room, the translation room, that's supposed to show that all of the parts of the computer are dumb. And if your brain is like a computer, then every part of it is dumb. So how are you not also dumb? Which, I don't know. I mean, like, maybe you're not convinced. Like, some people aren't convinced. Some people think, no, the brain is a computer. It's just like a computer. We're just a really fancy one. And that's a view that like a lot of smart people have.
Okay. Yeah, because I was curious. I mean, like, yeah, because it's like, we'd look at like long term and short term. I feel like computers, we got a recycling bin. We get rid of info we don't want or we don't use all the time. So, so practically, it's as I know, it's like our brain isn't like exactly like a computer. It can process things kind of like it, but it's not exactly like it. And there's similarities. There's a merit to comparing it to it, but it's kind of different. Okay.
That's right.
All right. So, all right, cool. Thank you. And so that was about it. I just needed some clarification.
Awesome. Thanks. No problem.
All right. Have a good rest of your week.
You too.
All joking aside, I'm not gonna fucking hold you hostage in a Zoom room.
You're good, man. I have to take off anyway. I have a meeting in a couple of minutes. So
yeah. Anyway, I'll catch you later, huh?
See ya. Bye.
See ya.